Hello, podcast listeners in podcast land. This is Dank here for the Not-for-Profit podcast. In the next coming weeks, I think I'm going to do a couple of solo episodes where I discuss what I do and what I'm about, and try to teach some principles about alignment and manifestation and how to find your purpose. So that'll be coming up. But in the meantime, we have a great interview today. We interviewed this young filmmaker named Grace. She's from California, and she's been achieving a lot recently and making a lot of friends in the city. She's only been here a couple of years, and she has a lot of great insights about the industry and where she came from and how she got to where she's at and how she sort of found her passion through nurturing it. It was kind of a long process, but it is blossoming quite nicely. So, yeah, take a listen. She's got so much to say, and it was a really fun interview. Stephen Chow was like Shaolin Soccer, and that to me was, I don't know, I like, because I think he follows this old kind of comedy. I feel like he was imitating Buster Keaton a little bit, where I noticed American comedies, like, people are just really stupid. Mm-hmm. They're just stupid.
Oh my gosh,
and everything's stupid, right?
Yeah.
But Buster Keaton would be like, he knew what was going on, and things were fucking crazy, and he would pretend like nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. He would just like walk away, and like that's what Stephen Chow and the Chinese were doing. They were kind of like, they're not stupid. They're actually all quite smart, and they're pretending to be stupid to get away with shit. And that to me is like so much funnier, because it just reminds me of life, like just pretending like things aren't happening when they're insane. And just kind of like, okay. You said you got into filmmaking later.
Yeah.
You were a literature major. And then you graduated.
And then I moved out here.
You moved right after graduation?
I moved before I graduated. So then I had to fly back to walk across the stage for commencement, and then I came back out here, yeah. And
you were not, so what triggered the film?
You moved from LA to here, right?
California. So I grew up in Cupertino, or San Jose and Cupertino, like where they make your iPhone.
Yeah.
Or where they design your iPhone. It gets made in China by tiny hands. But no, and then I went to school in Santa Barbara, and so I moved from Santa Barbara to New York. Yeah, I've only been here for like 3 years. Yeah, less than 3 years. Yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, is that how long Molly has been here?
Molly's only been here like less than 2 years.
I'm approaching 3 years this June. Yeah.
How was it in the beginning? I mean, what made you want to move here so fast?
So a lot of different things. I had a lot of personal reasons actually. So it's like tricky when people ask me like, because a lot of people ask me like, should I move to New York? And then they want me to know why, especially because I was like 2 hours away from LA, so a lot of people are like, why didn't you just move to LA instead of across the country to New York? But there were a couple of different things. Like the personal reasons were that at the time my family had moved back to Korea. My parents, so I have two older brothers. They were off doing wherever. My oldest brother was in Tanzania doing work there in Africa, basically. And then my other brother was also, I don't know where he was actually. I think he was in Korea also. And then my dad's work had moved him back to Korea, excuse me. So like I had like no family left, and I was still in college, So as I was graduating, I was like, well, like,
you're the youngest?
Yeah, I'm the youngest, yeah. And so like my family home was being rented out. So I was like, it's not like I have like home to go back to while I figure things out. Like other people went to their parents' home while they were like applying to jobs and stuff, but I didn't really have that. And then at the time, like my best friends from school, from high school, they were all scattered across the country. And they were all on the East Coast. My best friend was going to Berklee School of Music in Boston. My other best friend was in Atlanta. Like they were all over. and I wasn't dating anyone at the time. And I was my senior year was kind of interesting because I got really recluse because I made a student film for the first time. So I spent that whole year just like working on that film and not really going out or like talking to anyone and like whatever. So like graduation was actually kind of lonely because like you're supposed to graduate with like all the friends you made throughout the 4 years, but I kind of in my senior year like lost all my ties with everyone. So anyway, so I was just like, there's nothing for me here. Like there's no one for me here. There's no reason for me to like stay in California. And I also thought that if I moved to LA, one, I'd been to LA a bunch of times and I never liked it.
Yeah.
And second, if I go to LA and like and I succeed, whatever that means, like I get a job in the industry and I like come up and finally be able to do the things that I want to do, then I would have spent my whole life in the state of California. And I was just like, I feel like if I want to be at the time I wanted to be a screenwriter. So I was like, if I want to be a writer, I need to like go experience things and be out of my comfort zone and just like try different things and meet new people. So I felt like I needed to uproot myself and go somewhere else. And the next like obvious place for film was in New York. But also it was like the year before my senior year, so my junior year in college, I spent a year studying abroad in Korea because my parents moved back to Korea my sophomore year. And it was actually really hard for some reason, even though you don't like see your parents every day because you're in college.
Yeah.
It felt like I got like a rug pulled out from under me.
Of course.
I just didn't have anyone to call if anything happened that would respond in real time, you know? And like...
Yeah, parents usually do that kind of shit after you're done with college.
Yeah. But they were like, you know, we rarely see her. We only see her like a couple times a year anyway. We'll just go to Korea. So they did that, and then it felt really jarring. Like I felt like I had no foundation. And then I realized, like, you know what? If they keep living in Korea, I'm not gonna get a job in Korea. I'm gonna get a job here. So I realized there was a limited number of days that I could live with my parents. So I decided to study abroad for a year in Korea, so I could spend like one last time like being in the same home as them. But it was also because I think I was depressed and I didn't like the school I was at and I didn't feel connected to anything and I wanted to like just do something drastic to get out of
there. And you feel connected to your parents?
Yes and no. I mean, yes
like
and no.
Everyone.
Like everyone.
Koreans, yeah.
Yeah. I think at that time it was a great source of comfort to be in my parents' home.
Sure.
Yeah, always. I mean, I guess when you were young, it's like that. You need that, foundation.
It's just easy, like it's kind of like when you go to a massage therapist after like a long time of not going, and you don't even realize how tight your muscles were. I feel like as soon as I step into the house that my parents are in, like I relax, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I was so tensed up, and you know, and then until I'm not anymore, but Yes, I spent a year in Korea and I really liked being in Korea. Like I really liked being able to ride the subway. I really liked not
clean subway.
Yeah, clean subway.
Were you in Seoul?
Well, kind of. My parents live in Anyang, but I was going to Yonsei University for exchange, so I was in that area.
Airbnb near there, right? No?
No.
Okay, I don't know where we were. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know where Yonsei is.
It's in Sinchon.
I have to see the map.
Kind of like near Hongdae and like...
Oh yeah, we were
like,
near Hongdae.
And near like Ewha Women's University and stuff like that. Yeah, and I really liked being there, like how everything was open late at night, how you didn't have to like Google map things, but you could just turn the corner and there's like a coffee shop there and a restaurant there and like a bookstore there, and like, you know, you could just let yourself kind of like get lost and walk, and you don't always have to have an agenda. There were lots of like museums in the city, and I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot. That year for me was like a lot of reclaiming and rediscovering things that I liked that I'd forgotten about, you know. So when I came back, and Santa Barbara is like a tiny little beach town that's really for wealthy white people to retire. Like there's the Santa Barbara Film Fest. I used to volunteer at it, right? And when you see the people lined up outside, it's like a sea of white hair, like just the age demographic is like retired people. So and there's like one museum there, and like there's just not a lot happening. And so I was kind of like itching for that kind of rhythm, I guess. And so New York felt like the closest thing to that in the States.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And I had a friend who was also at the potluck, Jason. I don't know if you guys met him. He's like a half Korean, half Colombian guy.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Tan,
And
has
his
glasses.
girlfriend, right?
His girlfriend was wearing red.
Yeah.
Red. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jason I actually met while we were studying abroad in Korea. And we became good friends, and we were like FaceTiming and stuff. And I was about, it was my first semester of senior year. I had just gone back to California, and I was like, do you think I should move to New York? Just like on a whim, because he's born and raised here. And he just kind of thought about it for like 2 seconds, and he was like, yeah, sure, I think you'd like it. And it's funny how like little seeds of ideas like make their way into your brain, and like a thorn, they just get stuck there for some reason. And then even though they're not based on any kind of rationale, so yeah, it just kind of occurred to me out of the blue, like maybe I would like New York. And then I got a tiny verbal affirmation from my friend, and I was like, okay, yeah, I really want to go to New York. And then all of a sudden it felt like it was like my lifelong dream to go to New York, even though I'd never thought about New York before that. So I think it just felt right. Yeah.
And does it feel right still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm learning to balance like the pace of the city, by just learning how to like, my whole MO this year and like towards the end of last year was learning how to like be more kind to myself and allow myself to partake in leisure, and how that's like a part of the creative process.
Yeah.
I think I'd bought into like the capitalist mindset of like you are your output, like if you can't, efficiency is like
Oh man. We have another friend that is like realizing this now, and because she wasn't like taking her own leisure time seriously too, and she would like, if another thing came up, she'd be like, oh, I'm gonna do she would cancel it. I'm don't do that. That's as important as all the other shit.
Totally. Yeah, and it just took me a while it took me like 2 years, I guess, of like being burnt out to like realize that there's just so many things wrong with that. But I think in a long conversation with one of my friends, we were just talking about like, I mean, first of all, it's not your fault that you've internalized this mindset, because it's being pushed onto you by companies that want you to buy stuff like all the time. So behind everything that makes you feel guilty for not being like efficient or just better, there's somebody trying to sell you something on the other side. So even like getting down on yourself because you feel that way, I'm like, it's normal for me to feel this impulse. I just need to like recognize it and let it go, but oh my gosh, where was I going with this? Oh, so that's all to say, I think the natural pace of New York is very suitable for me. Like I'm naturally kind of like, I want to move things along. I want to go. But with that comes like giving myself time to, relax and like regenerate, I guess.
So
why did you make a student film? And how did that work? I mean, you were a literature major, right?
Yeah. So before I went to Korea, my sophomore year, is when I started thinking like maybe I would like to be. So do you want the long version or the short version? Like, what's better? There's a lot of different ways I can give you this recap.
I think people want to hear the long version.
Okay. So in my sophomore year, I was kind of on a marketing track. I was doing a sports marketing internship.
Sports.
Sports marketing. Not because I cared about sports, but because I wanted a marketing internship, and the one that opened up happened to be for sports marketing. So I was doing that, and like my whole MO in college was was to have a job by the end of it. Because the summer before I went to college, I ran into a bunch of older girls that I went to church with, but they were like several years older than me. So as I was going into college, they had just graduated like around that time, or were like within a year of graduating. So I went to dinner with them, and it was like a pretty bleak dinner because they were all complaining about how they don't have jobs and how the job application process sucks. And I was so confused as like an 18-year-old. I was like, but you guys just spent 4 years in college. Like, why do you not have jobs? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So that fear was, they like primed me with that fear before I went into college. So my whole MO when I was in college was like, I'm going to get like decent enough grades to like, so I got in, when I got in, I was in the honors school or whatever. So, and you need to maintain like a 3.6 GPA. So I was like, I'm just going to maintain the 3.6 GPA to stay in the honors program. But I'm going to focus all my energy on like making sure I have a job after college. So I was like trying to get internships and work experience and like whatever and all that stuff. I'm a very anxious person, I think. I'm starting to realize. Like I hated the idea of like making a mistake or like wasting time or whatever. I've gotten a lot more fluid now, but it's taken a lot to get here. And even still, my baseline anxiety I think is like worse than other people's. But
People have
I mean, a lot of people have
Yeah.
this
Especially
baseline.
here.
It's more common, I think, than uncommon, actually. I think it's actually uncommon to meet calm
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are not anxious, actually.
Yeah.
Totally.
They're rare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of my mates are like that.
So marketing track, college. Because you want a job.
I wanted a job, so I was in sports marketing. And in sports marketing, I was learning how to use Photoshop. And that was kind of cool. I'd never known how to like use like software like that before, so I was
Yeah.
like, this is pretty cool. And I could get really lost in like making stuff in Photoshop. And then one day it occurred to me, I was like, this is really fun, but I'm literally making brochures, that event brochures for like sports games that people are throwing into the waste bin. So I was like, what is the point of that, you know? Like, this adds no value to anyone's life, this like brochure that I'm making. And so then I had to like contend with myself. I was like, okay, like, and you know, I grew up in Silicon Valley, like with a lot of, and I also didn't have a lot of role models for what professional women look like working women, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and like all my friends' moms were
Yeah.
stay-at-home moms. So I was like, what does that even look like? You know, dads go to work and the mom like maintains the home and like volunteers and like you know, my mom had a lot of leadership roles like in church and like outside organizations, but she wasn't working, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like I never thought about that actually until now.
My mom was the breadwinner. She went to NYU for computer science. She was smarter, funnier, more charismatic than my dad, and that is the reason I'm a feminist. It's not because I knew something else. It's like that was my reality. My mom was the power, right? And I modeled myself after. I even like kind of talk like her. We have the same handwriting. Like I model so much of myself after her. Then when I, you know, was socialized and saw society, and I could tell people just like believed men were better than women, I just like couldn't comprehend this.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
what are you guys talking? This doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. That's not my reality. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, my mom is smarter and more charismatic than my dad, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's also why I'm actually glad. It's tricky because that's why I'm glad I had her at home rather than my dad. You know?
Sure.
Because I think she
That's a
had
good
the
point.
more like important job, which is passing that on to like 3 children. You know what I mean? Whereas my dad's job, I mean, don't get me wrong, my dad works hard. He's a very good person, but like that's a job that anybody can do more or less to like bring in income. But like the fact of like who I wanted to like be around and like emulate, I'm glad that it was my mom, you know. But anyhow, yeah, so I didn't have any working women or whatever, but basically I was just like, oh man, like I grew up upper middle class. If I get a job in marketing after I graduate, I had this like flash of like what the next like 30 years are gonna look like, and I was like, I'm gonna get a job straight out of school working in some marketing department. I'm gonna do pretty well because I've been primed to do well through like my schooling and like whatever, and I like hierarchical systems where you know exactly what you're supposed to do and what you need to do to get to the next step. So, and I kind of like thrive in that environment, so because I like certainty, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, and I'm just gonna like slowly work my way up to the ladder, and probably when I'm like 40 or 50 or whatever, I'll be like head of the marketing department, and I'm gonna have a Bluetooth, and I'm gonna drive my kids to soccer practice, and I'm gonna marry a guy who also has a Bluetooth, and everything that I will experience will just be the same thing that I've experienced up to now. Like my entire existence, I will just experience only things that I already know. And that was like so scary and boring. I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna go work and like live in suburbia and like try to raise kids while they do this. They go to the same school that I went to and then send, like we're all just doing the same shit, you know? And I was like, that's such a waste of a life.
Gosh. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah. And so then I started to seriously like, that amongst a lot of other existential things were going on. But like, at the end of my sophomore year, I was like, wow, so I had this complex about how I don't finish anything. Like I'm a quitter. Like my whole life, my mom would put me on like all these extracurriculars and like, I was always a student that had a lot of potential. So like teachers really liked me in the beginning, but none of that potential ever like manifested into anything. Like I used to go to an art studio. The teacher really, really loved me, and she was always, and when I quit, she was like begging me to come back once I got into high school so that I could like make a portfolio and go to art school, but I just didn't want to go to the studio anymore, so I quit. And I used to sing, like my whole family's very musical, so my dad was in an adult choir, my brother sang in the choir a couple of times, but I was in a choir and, you know, like they wanted me to keep doing it, and then I quit after like 2 years, and I was really good at tumbling, which is really random, I know, but I was really good at tumbling. But yeah, it just started to get expensive, and like the only reason I started tumbling was because I thought I wanted to be a cheerleader, but then my parents, on the day of cheerleading tryouts, my parents were like, oh, we don't want you to do cheerleading because we don't want you to like run around in a short skirt in front of everyone. So they wouldn't let me do it, and I was like, well, there's no point in doing tumbling if I'm not going to be a cheerleader, and it's not like I was going to be a gymnast or something, so I quit that as well. And so many other things I've done. I quit track and field. Obviously, I played piano for like 8 years but never was very good at it because I never practiced. I played flute for 2 years and quit. I can't play now. I took Japanese for 4 years, can't speak Japanese. Like, all these things that I like, if I had just stuck to it, maybe it would be a skill or something of value. But I was like, I'm already 19, 20 years old. I mean, at that time I was 20. I turned 20 that year, and I was like, wow, I've turned 20 years old, and like, I don't know how to do anything. And I don't have anything to show for my life, or like, yeah. And yeah, dance was a big part of my life all throughout high school, and then I gave it up when I went to college because I was like, I'm not going to be a professional dancer, so like, I just stopped. And yeah, so then I was like, what is it just gonna be me for the rest of my life? I'm just gonna start and quit things. And it was really depressing that was like the common thread in my life.
I'm guessing you were quitting because you didn't want to lock in anything permanently. Like you were afraid if you stuck to it, that would be the rest of your life.
I don't know if that's what it was. I think I think for me, maybe that was a part of it. I think honestly though, it was just like a lack of discipline. Like I was too distracted by fun things. Like I just wanted to be a fun, normal kid who had fun with her friends and like thought about things like prom and like hanging out with my friends and like whatever. I just got distracted by like those kind of like frivolous things that I didn't have a lot of like interests, like hobbies, other than like reading. And so that's what I came back to actually. So I looked at myself and I was like, is there anything that I like to do that, especially because in those last 2 years, all I'd been doing was partying. So I was like, what do I even do? And all my spare time is spent partying and socializing. So like, what was it that my hobbies are? I was like, yeah, the only thing I could think of was that I'd always loved reading and writing. And that's something I'd loved since I was a kid. Like my parents, I'm the third kid, so my mom didn't try to teach me how to read, but just like, I think I learned how to read watching TV programs. I don't really remember. She just said that like one day she saw me reading, even though nobody taught me how to read. So I started reading when I was really young, and like, it was a big thing when I was in elementary school, like being put into like accelerated programs just because I like to read so much. And that's why I wanted to be an English major, you know? So that was like the only through line. So I was like, okay, I know I love literature, I love stories, I like storytelling, but like maybe I want to write, but I don't know what I want to write. And because I wasn't reading back then, I was like, nobody reads books anymore. What do I want to write? And I was like, well, I've always been a very visual person. So I was like, maybe I wanted to write for a medium that I felt like had a lot of reach. And so it was like TV and film. Like, you know, a lot of people watch TV, a lot of people watch film, and it's very like in your face, it's very visual. So maybe that's something I would like to explore. So then so kind of like the moving to New York thing, like a little tiny seed like planted itself in my brain, even though it wasn't founded on any kind of like reality or like evidence to support it. I never even really liked watching films actually because anyways, and my dad loves entertainment. So he was always watching like blockbuster movies. Like he would bring those bootleg CDs back from business trips in China and like watch them. But so I grew up watching like The Last Samurai and like Matrix and like, albeit the Matrix is pretty good, but like, and entertaining as a kid. But like when I would go to the movies with friends, we'd be watching stupid like Judd Apatow movies, like Balls of Fury and like all these movies that didn't make me really laugh or feel any type of way. And at the end of it, I'd spend the whole 90 minutes in the theater just like waiting for like a genuine response to come out of me, and it would never come. And in the back of my mind, I'd be like, I don't know if that was worth $12, you know? That's how I felt. So that's why I never understood why there were these people who love film so much and were like huge film fanatics and things like that. And then the summer before I went to college, it's funny because I ended up dating this person later, but I watched a movie with two of my friends from high school, and they were both big movie buffs, and we watched Before Sunrise by Richard Linklater. And that was like the first time I'd watched something and been like, whoa, like this really resonates with me and like stirs something in me that's very like deeply like rooted in me. And like, you know, Julie Delpy in that movie, like she said so many things that my 19-year-old self had felt but couldn't articulate, you know? So that was like, yeah. So, and I remember like, yeah. And then 2 years later when I was thinking like, I would like to write for something, and I was like, what is something that's recently that's like moved me and made me feel something? And I remember thinking that, you know, the Richard Linklater movies made me feel that way. And so I was like, maybe I could write for the screen, and some other lonely person out there can like feel something and feel, I don't know, some kind of solace in that. Yeah, and a lot of my films do actually end up featuring like lonely people. I don't know. It's not something I did on purpose, but like now looking back, I was like, oh yeah, all my films are kind of about lonely people. Yeah, so that's when I got interested in screenwriting. So I took so then I went to the films department, but our school was not a film production school, it was a film studies, like film criticism and theory. So I talked to the department head and I told him like, what do I do? I'm an English major. Should I double major in film studies? Like, what do you recommend? And he was like, well, what is it that you want to do? And I was like, I want to write and I want to maybe make movies. And he was like, well, we're not a film production department. There's only a couple of film production classes that we offer. And honestly, I think you can find your way into those classes without declaring the major. If you declare the major, you have to take a bunch of film theory classes. If that's interesting to you, then you should do it. But if all you care about is film production, then just weasel your way into the film production classes. So I was like, okay. At the time, I wasn't interested in film theory because I didn't know what it was. And also I thought maybe that coming from an English background and not like learning about official film theory or like watching all the film, like not being aware of the canon would give me a more interesting perspective and not like prime me to think about films the way everybody else does. So, or the way that film students do. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get into the film production classes. But then I went to Korea for a year, so that was kind of on hold. And then when I came back, there's the biggest film production class offered at UCSB. It's called Film Studies 106, and it takes place over 2 quarters. You do the first part and second part like in 1 year, and you basically make a short film. And so, but how they choose it is you submit a script and you pitch it to to a panel that they bring from LA, you know, through their own personal connections, and then they pick one. So I submitted my script, or I was waiting so the story is actually pretty funny because I'd been waiting all summer for this thing to open, so for an opportunity to like make a film, but my script wasn't finished, and because I didn't know which one to submit, and then when I wanted to be a screenwriter, I didn't understand like what it takes to make a movie. So obviously my first attempt to write was like a feature film, you know? So I had like bits and pieces, like 30 pages of like a feature film that I hadn't really figured out. And my friend was like, you should submit this to the thing, except make a shorter version of it. Now I'm a dumbass because I didn't understand when you make a shorter version of it, he means like literally just take a portion of the film that makes sense by itself. But what I did is I took the beginning, middle, and end of a feature film and just smushed it into a short film so that it just didn't make any sense, you know?
It could work. I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, but I see what you're saying.
It didn't make sense in the context of how I executed it. And like the pacing was all wrong and like whatever. But also it was a drama. It was like a big thing like that needed time to unfold. And it was just like a 15-minute movie, so it escalated so quickly and it didn't feel right, you know? But anyhow, so I wrote it, and then I should have submitted it on Friday when the thing opened, but I was such a slacker, so the submission thing opened on a Friday. I should have submitted it right then, but because I was a slacker, my script wasn't ready, and so I like played around with it on Saturday and then Sunday, and then Monday came, and I still hadn't finished it. And it was supposed to close that Wednesday, so I was like, it's fine, I still have 2 more days. And then I get a department-wide email saying, like, all the slots are full to pitch. And I was, like, so devastated, because I was like, I've been waiting all summer for this. It's my senior year. It's my last chance to, like, make a film in school. And, you know, and it was all because of my own laziness. And I already had this complex about, like, not being disciplined, you know? So I was really upset. I went to the department office and I let them know, like, oh, is there really no way for me to submit, blah, 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 all this stuff. He was like, you know what, just give me your email and we'll let you know. But honestly, like, all the slots filled up on the first day. It's like 10 pitch, blah, blah. But the professor was really kind. He was like, you know what, you should still try to come and, like, try to get on one of the projects as, like, a crew member. And, like, that way you can still learn and, like, maybe you can try to make something else, like, in the future or what have you. So I was like, sure. And he's like, you should come and see the pictures. I was like, okay. So I just stopped writing that film because I was like, there's no point, right? And then Friday came, and the next Friday, the pitches, so I went and I showed up just to watch who else was pitching so that I could hear about which project I wanted to, like, try to get a crew position on. And then the professor walks up to me in the seat and he's like, hey, Grace, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, I meant to tell you, you know, I think you're going to be able to pitch today. And I was like, what? I hadn't practiced anything. Like, I hadn't even practiced, like, how to talk. I'd never even talked about my films in front of my scripts in front of anybody. I'd never even shown anyone my work at this point because it was still very, like, nascent, and I was still kind of like, oh, I can't show anyone this until it's perfect, kind of. And I was like shaking, visibly shaking the entire time because I didn't know how to, like, get up there and present and pitch a script that also wasn't even finished. And I didn't have, like, a visual, like, slide or anything. I just went up there and I was like, yeah. And I blew it. Like, I just, like, bombed. I don't even remember what I said, but I was so nervous and my voice was quivering and, like, it was just bad. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's over. I did it. It's fine. I didn't get it. But then the professor was just like, hey, Grace, I'm taking the panelists out to lunch, like, in downtown Santa Barbara. Can you bring us a copy of your script? You know, because they didn't have it. And I was like, yeah. And so I run home and I quickly type some bullshit ending to the script. And then I print it out and I drive 20 minutes downtown and I pass it to them. And I'm still, like, shaking as I'm driving. And I just give it to them. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like, because it sucks to, like, not be able to prepare for a moment like that, you know? But then the next Monday, so 4 projects got selected out of, like, the 15 that pitched. And then for some weird reason, my script got selected. So I was like, so that's how I got to make the film my senior year. And, like, it was very weird because I was just, like, this random English student who just showed up in the film department. And, like, you know, all the people who want to do production, they all already know each other because they've all worked on films with each other and stuff like that. So it was a very, like, weird experience to, like, go in there and then be the director. And I didn't even really know what the director was supposed to do, you know? Like, for a while I was doing a lot of producing only because I didn't know that that's not the director's job, you know? Things like that, and a lot of just straight up, like, first time filmmaker things, like, I didn't understand. Like, oh, I can't just do, like, crazy camera moves because you need gear to make the camera do it, you know? Like, things like that. Like, I can't put the camera, like, I can't frame the character like this because we built a set and, like, the set ends here, so I can't get the framing that I want, and, like, all these things. So, like, yeah, it was like a boot camp, though. Like, I'm really grateful for the experience because I learned everything in, like, 7 months, and then I got spit out into New York City and just started freelancing.
Freelancing?
Just a lot of random things. I produced a couple of short films for other people. I script supervised. I AD'd a little bit, just started doing... And, like, that's the thing. I would never know what a script supervisor does. I would never know how to produce a film if I didn't see everything from the vantage point that I had. Because if I had worked on another student's film as, like, a PA or even, like, a random job, I'd only have, like, a narrow, like, slice into production, and I wouldn't understand how that role fits into, like, the film as a whole. But because I was the director and I had to, like, see everything and I was learning things as I was going, I was like, oh, I understand why I need a script supervisor, because they tell me, like, what I have and what I don't have, and they take care of continuity, and, like, that's important because blah, blah, blah. Whereas, like, if I was just holding a boom for 8 months straight, I wouldn't know what the heck other people's jobs are and why they were needed to be there. So it was good. It was like a boot camp for me, but I lost like 20 pounds making that film.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep at all. It was like the most stressful thing I'd ever done. And it was bad. Like, it was a bad film. That's the worst part, is like I lost all my friends. You know, I poured all my sweat and tears. I crowdfunded money for it. So, like, it was the first time I announced to everyone around me that, like, hey, I'm making a film. People were like, whoa, we didn't know you were interested in that. And people put money into it. And it was so embarrassing to, like, have this really shitty film and be like, this is what I made. Also, I'm going to pursue this as a career. And people were like, are you sure? And it was really bad because it was a drama. So the premise of the film, if you're interested, it was called Albino Black Sheep. It was about 4 guys who are stuck on a rooftop, but they're not really stuck. Like, the door to the rooftop, to exit the rooftop, is open, but, like, every time they try to, like, do something to leave the rooftop, like, they just come up with some excuses to, like, why they can't do it. And they start, like, fighting each other and getting upset, and then eventually, like, one of them kills the other one, and, like, all of that.
Did you read No Exit?
I did read No Exit, but not before I wanted to make the film. I read it as a reference after people read my script and were like,
told you this is like No Exit.
Yeah, it was actually, like, it was my, what I wanted, what's that Louis Buñuel film? Angel. The Exterminating Angel. It was essentially, I read the logline to Exterminating Angel, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and this was basically what I thought or wished that Exterminating Angel was going to be based on the logline. So that was the film. And so it's like a drama, right? And, like, during the screening, there was somebody, I don't know, it feels weird to say this, but there was somebody, I feel like, that was, like, in a wheelchair, and I think they were, like, on the spectrum, and so they wouldn't stop laughing at my film. Like, and it wasn't, like, a chuckle, like, oh, this is so bad, like, that kind of, it was just, like, a hysterical laughter. Wow. And then, because they were so loud, everyone around them was like, are we supposed to... Yeah, they were like, are we supposed to laugh? You know? Like, so then everyone out of courtesy started laughing when that person started laughing. And so they were laughing at my film that was not a comedy, you know? It was not supposed to make people laugh. So it was really, like, it was pretty, like...
traumatic. It felt...
It felt bad, yeah. But, yeah, it felt bad. And, like, that film... you know what's so funny is, like, it felt bad, but the bad feeling didn't stay with me that long. Surprisingly. I felt worse getting rejected from, like, grants and, like, getting rejected from film festivals. Like, that felt worse to me than that screening. Because I knew it was bad. Like, maybe if I had gone into it expecting people to react like, oh, it's so good, would have felt bad, but I knew deep in my heart that like this was not a good film, so I just didn't think they would react like that, but I was like, can you blame them, and a guy who was supposed to be the editor on that film that ended up not being the editor for a number of reasons. At the after party, everybody got like really drunk and stuff, right? And he got super drunk. He came up to me and told me to my face. He was like kind of my friend too. Like we were in the same social circles, but he was so drunk. He came up to me and said to my face, like, honestly, Grace, like when I saw your film today, like I was really glad that I didn't work on it.
Wow.
And I was like, but he was saying it with like a tone that was very like smiley and friendly, which was very, because he was drunk. So I was like, I think you're like trying to like disguise it as like a backhanded compliment or something, but you're just actually saying how you really feel, which is that it sucked and you were glad that you didn't work on something that sucked, but yeah, I don't actually like it. It actually wasn't traumatic.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, you'd think it would be, right? Especially because I have like thin skin.
Well, but it like it seems like other things you were trying to do, you're trying to control things, control this, and this sort of kind of like happened.
Yeah.
Without any control.
Yeah.
So then, after the movie happens, if people don't respond to it, it's not like you didn't really control what was happening, so...
I mean, everything went wrong with that film.
Yeah.
From production to, like, cast members to all the way to post-production. Like, there was not a single phase of that film that went smoothly. And so when the post-production mishaps happened, like a week before we were supposed to deliver the finished film, at that point I had just raised the white flag, I was like, yeah, this is out of my control. It is what it is. There's no point in getting hung up over it because, you know what, it's not a masterpiece. I just have to finish it and screen it, and it's unfortunate. But I think the biggest takeaway from that experience was that that year was really hard for me because I was trying to graduate early, so I packed on a lot of classes while I was making a film. So I was taking like more classes than I'd ever taken and making a film. And because I felt guilty about the last like 3 years where I didn't take my education and my resources very seriously, I was like, I want to get straight A's these next 2 like semesters. So I read every single assignment and like did every single piece of homework that I was given. So, and I had like a roommate situation where she had like sleep apnea or something, and I'm a light sleeper. So I just didn't sleep that whole year. Like I slept in the living room sometimes because the snoring was so bad. And my producer was like very emotionally like putting things onto me a lot. So at home and at school, I just had a lot of like emotionally draining things. So it was like super exhausting. Like I'd never been tested to that degree. Even now as an adult, like things are stressful, but I think it was like a very unique kind of stress in that moment. So, people I hadn't seen in a while would look at me and they'd be like, are you okay? You look like someone put you in a cave for like 4 months and starved you, because I had become so gaunt. But I walked away from that, like when that film ended, I was just like, one, I gotta make another one, because I can't let this project be like the one thing that survives if I ever say like, even if I quit film and I never do film again and I'm just like live a normie life, I can't let this be the last thing I ever produced and like put out into the world, And then second was this like deeply rooted certainty that I knew that I was better than that film. Like I knew I was capable of making something that was good. I really trusted that I had like taste and like instinct, and that I just didn't have enough practical knowledge to do it right the first time. But I like had this weird faith that like I knew I could do a better job, and so I couldn't let that be the thing that represented my skills as a director. But also I was just like, that was like weirdly fun. I want to like do it again because it was fun, and I think it'll be more fun the second time around because there's less of a learning curve, So I think that was like comforting, knowing like that it wasn't like a breeze. It was actually one of the most stressful time. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. emotionally turbulent, you know. I cried a lot throughout the whole process because it's not even like I had good people supporting me. I had like a very toxic producing partner and like was very like passive aggressive and like just a lot to deal with. And then I had that same energy at home, so I was always like tiptoeing around other people's like volatile emotions. And so it was very draining. And I was like, if I can go through all of that and still feel like I want to make films, like that's pretty, I think that's like something special. I don't know, like there's something to be said for that. So yeah, that's, and then I moved to New York and I was like, I want to make movies. And I talked to people a lot, actually, like professors and stuff. I was like, should I go to LA? Should I go to New York? Like, what do you think I should do? But basically a professor in Korea told me like, you know, he actually is a professor at Ithaca College, so I know a lot of people in the city that know him now, but he basically was like, you know, give it 30 years, you're going to be a director. Like, I mean, not like in 30 years, but like in any given amount of time, if you pursue the path, you're going to get there. It's just a matter of how you want to get there. He's like, you can go to LA, work an assistant job, work your way up and like become, and then slowly become a director, or you can go to New York and start doing independent film, which is not as like certain and not as guaranteed, but like, hey, you're making independent film. And like, honestly, in either space, if you give yourself enough time, like you'll get there eventually. And I was like, I don't want to fucking wait 20, 30 years to do the thing that I want to do. It's like, I want to make films now. I don't know if I'm going to die at age like 22, you know? So like, I don't want to be, when I die, I want to die as a director. I don't want to die as an assistant who was hoping to be a director later, you know? And I was also like, it's not like someone gives you the opportunity to be a director and then you become one, right? Like you have to learn how to be a good director and that takes practice. So I need to make films now so I can keep getting better. And I don't know. I also just was like, I don't want to do I'm very impatient. So I was just like, I don't want to do anything that I don't want to do, basically. If it's not the thing that I want to do, then I just don't want to do it. Like, forget it, you know? I want to direct now, and I want to be a director now. So I'm going to move to New York and just do it, I guess.
So you moved here. Mm-hmm. And you've made, how many films have you made so far?
So I have...
Outside of that first film?
Technically, I have 2 that are completed, including that first film. But I'm in post right now for 2 of them. So 4. But the other 2 have just taken a while to complete.
What did we see the other night?
Oh, that's my second film.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, for example, I shot that film 2 months after, or I shot that film, so I finished Love Seat, my first film, in August, and then I shot that film like 3 months later. It's like I was always so anxious to like put more stuff out there, and I'm trying to learn how to not do that anymore. But yeah.
How do you fund your films?
So the first film is the banana one. There's a lot of bananas in it. You can it's online now, actually. You guys can watch it. But that one I funded just like with my own money that I had saved up when I was in college, with the intention that I was gonna like make a film, you know. So it was just money, but it was also money that I just had saved up for, you know, like my whole adult life. Yeah. College, not high school, because like I didn't really have like money, but I was like working part-time, and like every time I saw family, like they'd give me money and I'd just like throw it in there. So yeah, and then my second film, the one you guys saw, I made that for like $1,000.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
With Film Shoppers, actually. Film Shoppers.
And they worked for free?
It was a 1-day shoot. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were just like, we'll do you a favor. So actually, Film Shop, you know, at the end of every year they do a film showcase. Like they have a theme showcase and everyone makes films for that. And like, there's a lot of free labor happening there because people will just work on each other's.
Is it like a time frame? Did that happen already?
It usually happens in the summer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is it like a time, like the theme is announced and then?
Yeah. Theme's announced in like, it should be announced pretty soon. Actually, like maybe it gets announced in like May or something, and then we have like the showcase sometime in the summer, like July or August or whatever.
So it's like 2 months to make a film?
Yeah, 2-3 months or something. But honestly, people already know it's coming, and the theme is very loose. So people are already thinking of like
anything.
Yeah, anything that
and
they
just
want to
fit
make.
it to the
Yeah,
theme.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that work? Is there teams or what?
I mean, you just post on Podio if you have an idea, and people will just post on Podio or like ask each other like, "Hey, I'm working on this. Like, do you want to AD for me? Do you want to do this for me?" And then people usually like swap favors, you know, like, "Hey, can you AD this for me?" And I'll like be a grip on your short when you make it, like that kind of thing. But in general, there's like a large spirit of camaraderie when it comes to the end of season shorts, you know. So people are definitely willing to like do so. Like so many of the film shop DPs will like shoot for free with their own gear. Like,
So the women's film challenge was your third film.
my third film. The fourth film I shot last June, but there's like an animation portion to it. And it's animation over live action, and I have one animator working on it in her spare time while she's doing her full-time job. So
Did we meet her? Did we meet her?
yeah, you met her, Diana.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's funny because at one point Ty, Diana, and my friend Tanmai. Did you guys meet Tanmai? It's like Indian
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
with
just
glasses.
little bit.
So he's also
At the end,
in Film
yeah.
Shop.
Right.
He runs Sandbox, the Directors Collective.
Okay.
Yeah, with Donnie, who was also the.
Donnie, yeah.
So the three of them were in a conversation together, and obviously they were like, "Oh, how do you know Grace?" And then Diana was like, "Oh, I'm working on an animated film with Grace." And then Ty was like, "Oh, I'm working on an animated film with Grace." And then Tomai's like, "I'm working on an animated TV show with Grace."
Yeah.
So I had three people who were working on an animation with me in the same conversation. It was really funny. But so Diana's the animator, and she has a full-time job, and she's like working on that in her spare time. So it's been slow. So that's my fourth film. But I guess now I'm working on another short with Ty because we got a tiny commission from Atlanta Film Society to make a film for the airport.
Wow.
So we're working on that right now, and that's due in like March. And then Tamai and I have been developing I don't know if you guys saw that poster that you see when you come out of my bathroom. There was like a poster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's our TV show that we've been working on for the last like 2
Animated
years.
TV.
So that's what So I'm going to LA to finish up this like Viacom like directing program that I got into fall of last year. But that thing is only 2 more days. But I extended my trip for a week so that Tamai and our animator Andre could come with me so we can set up like prelim meetings because we want to pitch it essentially this summer. So that's like the thing I'm most excited about.
How did you set up meetings?
Literally emailing like every single person I know and being like.
Oh, in California?
In California, but also people in New York.
Yeah.
Just like everyone I know in New York and being like, we're going out to LA with this TV show. Can you introduce this to anybody? So like a friend introduced me to another like Korean guy who's like a TV writer out there. Ty's friend works for like Amazon Studios and like development, and like I'm also in a directing fellowship that's for female commercial directors at this creative agency called Picture Farm. So I usually like if I need anything, I just go to them. I was like, "Do you know anyone that does this? Do you know any female directors that you could introduce me to?" Like blah blah. So I told them about the show. They liked it. They looked at it and stuff, and so they put me in touch with someone who works at Disney out there. So it's been surprising actually because I always felt like I don't know anyone in the industry and like blah blah. But I realized even if I don't know, it's just about asking everyone around you, because if you work in film or entertainment, you know someone who knows someone who knows someone. So like, yeah, that's been like a nice thing to like realize, because I always felt like, how do I get to know who's in the industry, or like how do I meet development execs or like whatever. So but the Viacom thing helps a lot, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
Because I asked them to help me set
That's so
up
funny.
meetings also.
So I have a project about a cult, it's like a comedy, actually.
Yeah, I think you told me.
Yeah, but the lead character, she's a publicist. She works for Viacom.
Oh yeah,
and
you
she
told me.
hates it,
Yeah. Yep. I mean, yeah. I don't think anyone enjoys it.
No, I don't know, but I don't even know why I picked Viacom.
Because it's a huge conglomerate, probably. Yeah. Almost every, like, they have like 10 networks to their name.
Right.
So, yeah. So, yeah.
You're part of Viacom?
Yeah.
Some incubating thing?
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys should look into it and maybe apply when it opens up this fall. But it's called Viacom Viewfinder program. But, like, all the big, like, networks have some sort of, like, directing program. Like, Sony has one, CBS, NBC, HBO, they all have one. Viacom's is, like, a little bit newer. It's only in its second year. I'm in the second, like, class or whatever. But they put you on a network. They assign you to a network, and then you go and shadow a director who's directing for a TV show on that network for throughout production and post-production. And, like, the shadowing itself is cool, but it's also, like, whatever. Like, you're just shadowing. Like, you don't have a job or, like, a role. But the nice thing is then afterwards...
You know everybody.
Yeah, you know everybody, and then you go and their goal is to get you to direct on a TV show within the year. So, so before I left for LA, there's a Viacom program coordinator here who works in the New York office. I got brunch with them, and I was just like, okay, I want to direct for TV. What is it that I need to tell these people in this meeting in order to direct for TV? And he gave me, like, some really, like, hard and fast, like, tangible things, you know? He's like, you got to convince them that you're worth, like, putting in charge of, like, $1 million, $5 million budget, you know, and just talk extensively about, like, that you understand, like, the craft of directing and that you're ready for it and stuff. But he also was like, but you don't have to, because I'm meeting the Paramount TV execs because that was the network I was assigned to, but he was also like, you don't have to be restricted to just Paramount TV. He was like, you should look at all the Viacom networks and think about all the shows that you would like to direct there. So then he had watched my directing sample, so he was like, right off the bat, I can say that you should set up a meeting with Comedy Central and Awesomeness TV and, like, Paramount Network, because they have, like, comedies. And so, yeah, and then basically I reached out to the LA coordinator, and right now he's trying to set me up with meetings with people at Comedy Central and blah, blah, blah. But the guy I met with in New York literally gave me, like, the names of people that I should ask to, like, set up meetings with. And so it's very, like, it's nice because a lot of times those kind of programs, like, they're very, like, for embellishing the network and making them look good by, like, having this diversity program, but they don't actually help people get to where they need to go. But, like, it was really nice because I mean, 2020 for me is, like, a year of just, like, manifesting things for myself. Just, like, I feel like I always expected. I'm just realizing more and more, like, the power of just asking for shit that maybe you don't deserve or whatever. But that was, like, a hard lesson for me to learn to just ask for things. Like, the program was really cool for me because I was like, yeah, I don't, like, all these other white dudes, they make, like, one short film and then they ask people to give them millions of dollars to shoot their first feature film. Whereas I maybe was, like, waiting to, like, get into, like, a really prestigious, you know, we just have, like, higher standards for ourselves, right? So we think that, like, other people will project those standards on us and be like, why should I give you a budget? Why should I give you this opportunity when you've only done this? But I realize it's up to me to frame it like, hey, actually, look at all this I've done. I'm going to get to the next step either way. Like, it's up to you if you want to be the person to offer me that opportunity and, like, be a part of, like, my growth. But if not you, then I'll find this opportunity elsewhere, you know? Like, so yeah, that program was very, like, affirming for me in that way. I was like, I know how to direct. Like, I shadowed this lady direct for, like, a month, and I was like, I know how to do all this. Like, there's nothing, like, mystical or, like, enigmatic about it, you know? You have a vision, you articulate it to your team, and you collaborate with other people to carry that out, you know? It's just scaled up to, like, a larger budget, more people, more, like, bureaucratic stuff. Like, there's, like, network notes and, like, clients and things like that. But, like, the process is still the same. It's not like if you make a short film, you can skip any of those processes. As opposed to, like, making a feature film. So I really walked away from it being like, I don't need to wait till I get into Sundance to ask people to let me direct for TV or to let me direct a feature film. Like, I have been directing for the last 3 years all on my own with way less resources. yeah, so it's been good. Like, but yeah, you should really look into the program, I think.
Yeah.
If you have a work sample, like, it would be good for you.
I do have.
We have a lot of work samples.
Right.
Yeah.
Pick the one. I would just suggest, like, pick the one that's tonally more in line with, like, the kind of shows you would want to direct for, you know? Because I feel like I do a lot. I actually now do more, like, dramas or, like, more experimental, more, like, heavy-hearted stuff. But that's not really what I want to direct for TV, probably. Like, I just want to direct, like, easy sitcom, kind of, like, funny, light stuff so that I can save that part of myself for my personal film. Excuse me. Keep burping because of all this water.
Burping is good.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Sorry, I don't know how we got to this topic, but yeah. So that's the whole recap on all the projects I'm working on right now. Also, mark your calendars for March 1st because I'm hosting an event that's like part of wrapped into my birthday, but also it's like a film retrospective for myself, but also it's an artist showcase, so I'm getting a bunch of like visual artists to donate their work, and like I'm gonna put them up for exhibit, and then we're gonna sell them so that I can fundraise for my next film that I'm trying to shoot on 16 millimeter.
That's a good idea.
If that makes sense. Yeah. You know what though? It's like people. Okay. This is my last like little quip about this whole thing. When I first wanted to do film, you know, like how people who don't pursue art kind of romanticize artists. They're like, because it's like, wow, to love something so much that you're willing to forego a stable job and like whatever. And like they're at their stable jobs that they don't necessarily love because they don't have any, they feel like they don't have anything they want to pursue to that degree. So like they might as well have a stable job. But and like my friend would say this to me a lot, and it's usually these kinds of like suburban kids who are doing exactly what they're expected to do, and they're just like, is that it? Like, is this all? No one tells you what to do after you get a job, right? Your whole life is set up like go to college and get a job, and then no one tells you how to like live life after that, and like how to enjoy things or how to find value in other things. But yeah, I just have friends who say things like, I wish I like loved music or something like that, where I'm just so passionate that like blah blah that I could just pursue it, but I just feel kind of like lukewarm about most things, and I don't have the one thing that is like my driving force. But then when I asked him, I was like, well, so like what do you do with your time? Like are you exploring different things? Have you tried looking at what things might interest you? And the answer is always like no, you know. And the reality of it is like, this is what I've learned about like what passion is, I think, throughout this whole process of like being very pragmatic about like what kind of person am I, maybe I want to do this. Like it's not is that people think it's a lot like falling in love with somebody, I guess. I mean, that's hard to say because I feel like I've also experienced love where you just meet someone and you click and like things just like it's like a whirlwind romance or whatever. But in general, like loving someone or like cultivating a relationship with someone in like that in a non-romantic way. Let me try to think how to phrase this properly. It's like you don't wake up someday on a random day and then like a lightning bolt of passion just like strikes you and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna be a painter, you know, or like I'm gonna be a sculptor, or like that's just not how life works, you know. And just like how it's very rare, I'm sure it happens to some people, I guess, but it's very rare to just like walk down the subway, lock eyes with someone and be like, that's the love of my life, you know. How it starts is like there's like a tiny seed of like interest or like some kind of something piqued and stirred in you by that thing or person, and then you pursue it, and then you realize like it's nice, and then you keep pursuing it and you start discovering more things you like about it, and next thing you know, you've invested so much time into it, and like it's invested so much time in you back, and like you're growing something. So like, yeah, film is my passion, I guess, but that's misleading because it makes it sound like it's this like fiery like thing that overtakes your body and there's no control over it. When in reality, it's more like a quiet, like precious thing that I've like watered and like gave sunlight and like let it grow over time, and now it's like this beautiful blossoming like big giant like tree in my living room that I can't imagine not having anymore, you know? So it's like, so yeah, and I think it's like that when you're cultivating relationships with people as well. Like you don't just lock eyes with someone and know for certain like that's my soulmate, although some people that happens to, I guess. But by and large, most of the time it's like something pulls you to a person, but you invest time into getting to know that person, and you build memories and you get to know them better, and you exchange like conflicts but also like resolutions and like, you know, and then that's how you like cultivate love, and it grows into, and it's like a living, evolving, breathing thing. And I think passion is the same way, and it's always people who are like waiting for passion to strike them. I think they just have a misconception of what passion is. It's like, if you want to discover what your passion is, you have to go look for it, and you have to try new things that you think you might like, and one of those things might be your passion waiting to be discovered and like cultivated. That's it. That's my spiel about film.
That's great.
Have you talked about this stuff before?
I mean, like, in lots of separate conversations, maybe. Yeah. Like, I'm sure people ask me about film a lot, so.
So that ended nicely. It was a much longer interview. I had to edit down a bit, but I think you got the gist of what she had to say. Grace will be putting on a show March 1st, a little retrospective art show where she's raising funds for her next short film. It's going to be shot on 16mm, I believe. And we'll put that info in the show notes, as well as her website and social media things she might have, so you can reach out to her. I'm not really sure. I don't have social media, so I don't know. But yeah, check out her work. And in the meantime, I'll be doing those solo episodes, and we're gonna try to release this every week, but maybe do a couple of solos in between to build up more content. If you like that is. And I think I'm gonna start a Twitter account so that people can ask me questions, random questions about their lives, questions about things they're confused about, and I'll answer them as quickly as possible, or answer them on the show in some sort of Q&A format. So that would be a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And this is Dank signing off for Not For Profit. Have a good one.